we've got to push hard to see the peaceful, results that we want to see in this world, and a society that loves each other, and doesn't just want to rip each other to shreds. I tortured myself like purposefully to say like, right, what are you all about? You know what I mean? Because that's what a lot of people were wondering, I think, like, what is DLR about? Because it's always been about other people. Like any top level professional, I think you should be able to like find those times of separation. Like if you're a world class tennis player and then you're playing your son at tennis, do you know what I mean? Then you shouldn't want to be like smashing him every single time. You can like detach and be like, look, this is hitting a ball around is fun as well. Really ask myself, who am I as an artist, and what am I giving this scene? And I think that is also where I really gratefully got a lot of respect back from the people in the industry who really mean a lot to me. One, and then comes the 2 to the 3 and 4. When I drop the beat, I have in store.
Yo, it's the One More Thing podcast, a place for unapologetically long interviews with unapologetically inspiring artists within and around the bass music realm. And today we welcome a very special guest, a guest I've been looking forward to reconnecting with for a very long time. It's none other than Sofa Sound bossman and all-round D&B don, DLR. Introductions aren't really necessary. This man has been setting a benchmark for an obscene amount of time. He's incredibly passionate about the craft and the process, and he's prone to moments of sheer intensity. So much so, I actually start this interview with a bit of an unorthodox intro and quite a confession. I'm really proud of this interview. I'm proud of every interview that I put out into the world, but this one is especially special. I'm Dave Columbo Jenkins, if you didn't already know. And if you like what you're hearing, then please help me spread the word and share this loud and proud. If you can support us on Patreon too. But most importantly, enjoy and get inspired. There is no other artist in the world quite like this man. Mr. DLR, thank you so much for joining me on this podcast.
Yes. All good. Big up. Thank you so much for having me, man, of course.
Yeah, I mean, I've been waiting to chat to you for a long time. And what I like to do with a lot of these is pull up a previous interview, an old interview. So are you up for playing a little game, a little guessing game?
What?
Right, so this is from an interview. Now, me and you, we must have done at least, I reckon, between 5 and 10 interviews over the last 12, 13
years. Thank you so much for that, putting up with me.
So guess, right? I'm going to spit out a quote that you gave me, and you've got to guess which era this is from.
Oh, God.
So I asked you, if you were a king, what would your first rule be? And this is totally relevant. It couldn't be more relevant to your new album, right?
Amazing.
And you got back saying, okay, once someone earns over a certain amount of money, they have to give some of it away to useful and beneficial and sustainable sources. People shouldn't earn stupid amounts of money and get away with it. Let's have a bit more equality and everyone can get on and enjoy their lives instead of being in a perpetual rat race. How's that? Like, go on. That stands today, but when do you think you said that to me?
Mate, I mean, honestly, I reckon it could be like 6 or 7 years ago. So what are we on now? 2000, so what, like around 2016 or something like that? But that might tie in around with some of my other albums.
Let's go back even further. Let's go back to January 2013.
I'm really, honestly, at this moment, like actually quite proud of myself that I've kept hold of an ideology for that long and not changed. There's been no alteration. In fact, I believe that more than ever. And I can see solutions. I think we all can. If I'm honest with you, but I don't know if the world's up for it. I don't know if people are up for it.
I would love to. I mean, I thought a lot about money. A friend of mine works in economics, and I thought a lot about money ahead of this conversation because of the theme of the album. Because a friend of mine is a mathematician and he tries to blow my mind. He does blow my mind. He melts my mind with the concept of money. And it's a lot of the stuff that you sample on your album relates to things that he's told me. And I've been asking him questions and it fries my mind. Anything economical or like anything with numbers in it, I can't deal with. Like my brain just doesn't translate in any way. But the one kind of thing that I thought, what am I going to say? Like one of my theories on money ahead of talking to Jay. And it's like, I think the billionaires should be illegal. And I've always thought that. But anyway, I looked up the interviews, and this is from a really, really mad time when you split up with Octane.
Octane.
And you called me up during the Christmas kind of break, and we were
Yeah.
talking about it because we'd done some interviews before,
Yeah.
and it was incredibly intense.
Yeah.
And at the time, I was in this really toxic situation with Drum and Bass Arena where
Mhm.
they were making me question my value a lot. I'd only
Yeah.
just made myself a drum and bass specialist as opposed
Yeah.
to a dance music journalist in general. And conversations with you would often go on for an hour, 2 hours. The transcriptions would take, 3, 4, 5 times as long. And for
Oh,
a
God.
couple of years after this interview, I purposefully shied away from any conversations with you because you're so intense. I didn't feel I had the intensity to match you back. I didn't feel, I was quite intimidated
Oh,
by the
God.
way that you articulated stuff and your intensity, man. And because I hadn't subscribed to the life at that point, I'd just become a dad, I'd just gone freelance.
Yeah.
I was in a very different world. I didn't really, I wasn't anywhere near as confident as I am now. And talking to you made me feel even less confident. It's like, this guy knows what he's doing. This guy knows what he's doing. In interviews that we've done since, I now realize that wasn't, but it was, I've never had a relationship like that with an artist as a music journalist. And it took me years to think I'm ready to chat to DLR. And I am fucking ready now, man.
Oh my goodness.
I'm
I say that like as
as
an evaluation of self, because that's what I've been doing for about 7 years. Is that yeah, like I know my I know that I have a lot of things to articulate to people, and that can be quite intense at times, and at moments in my like my life, I guess I struggle with the filter and knowing when the right time and wrong time is. And but like in general, in all right mind, I'm very that's why I'm at such a high level of production and stuff, very reflective person on myself and how to get to certain points. Yeah, and I try and curb my how full on I can be, however, whilst also embracing that, because that's my thing, like. And my mum actually revealed this to me recently, that she felt very similar about herself, and it would express that when she really, really tried to suppress this full on aspect of her personality, she was not happy at all. So it's good for me, like, I've understand a lot of this stuff now. So it's interesting, because if you talked to me about that and you said that like 4 or 5 years ago, I would have been like, whoa, oh my God, into my shell. And but I know, I feel that, and I'm glad that people are often up for some robust conversation these days. So that's so mad though. Like,
I was thinking, like, how
I
am I
really
going to start
appreciate you
this?
saying
And I
it,
thought,
man.
I want to be honest. I thought this would be a really cool way to start the podcast. It's either going to be a real car crash, or it wipes the slate clean, because I've got little kind of murmurs of that. And we've spoken so many times since. We've got loads of mutual friends and stuff.
Yeah.
We've had deep interviews about all types of things, like mental health, weed and stuff like that, not just drum and bass. But there was a couple of years where I wasn't ready to commit to such full-blown epic kind of discourse, really, with certain people. Really, I didn't have the headspace, I don't think. Now my headspace is completely dedicated to having conversations like this, and I think they're amazing. I think they're beautiful. So it's like, what better way to start what will be a really inspiring conversation, whichever direction we go, and then finding this quote from that interview as well, which relates to the album. I got goosebumps now. I'm tingling.
It's really good. You've done really good there. I love how, like, linking all of this together. It's actually nuts to me, so I don't really think about that side of things too much. But yeah, I think one, like, just to sort of take away from what you're talking about, what you're saying is that I've learned over the years, more so than ever, I hope, that ways of like finding moments and finding ways to communicate things that like, I think everybody has to understand that if they've got strong ideologies and ideas and perspectives on the world, especially, and the music that we write, as well, please, like, that's the main example, then, like, you've got to find a way to communicate that. You can't just like overwhelm people, and it is easy to do that at times. So like finding out that way to communicate and learning that is really has been a useful thing for me. I feel like, and I can have much more back and forth and good, that good productive conversation with people, and also translate messages via my art, which is my main outlet, really. I think.
Yeah. You always have done. And another thing that I've found as well, which kind of links to the new album on your last album. So there's a track on Dreamland, Living the Dream, where you talk about all of the concepts on, money till I got none, in a way of living life with trying to live a life without money. Basically, that's and it's it's almost a bit of a skit of a track. There's spoken word. It's like, I think it might be you and Steve Mako and somebody else.
Oh yeah. When
there might be a French guy in the mix as well.
Yeah, the guys were up for like having a chat about life, which was really cool actually. Yeah, they were, and I noticed it on the balcony in Mako's house just had a really cool sound to it, dreamy sound, and it's in Clifton as well, so there's a bit of a the richest area of Bristol, so there's a switch on the perspective. Yeah, that's interesting. It was a track that I did with Focus called Ask the Question, and like I didn't give Focus this concept, and for me at the time, again, like with most vocalists I've worked with, I'm like, how are you just tapping into like my inner psyche? And like that's my whole life, and I've learned to, I was like the why kid at school, why. And like where teachers are like, look, Jay, it is okay, shut up. So like now I've learned to like figure out a way of asking those questions. And that's all I want to do. That's all I'm doing, like we're all trying to figure out things, So it's ask some questions and try and analyze what's going on.
Have you ever felt that you've got anywhere near close to any answers?
One I'd take away from the album that I thought was really interesting, because I had no intention of being like, I'm going to do this solo, because the drive for money can often be quite a solo drive and lead you to isolating yourself. And so whilst obviously understanding that both these processes, whether it's writing an album or driving for success with your finances, are going to include a lot of other people in a team, but it can really like end with you as like the main end point. So I found that like from that album, I just really learned I love to work with people. Like isolating myself is not something I'm really that keen on, and so if the drive for money and that like level of riches is ever gonna put me in that position, and I'm not really interested in that. Like I'd rather go and just involve myself in society and be with people. I think that'd be much happier. So that's definitely the ultimate conclusion that I've always come to.
Yeah, and that makes you
with my music as well. Sorry, like music for me is about working with people and collaboration.
Yeah, definitely. I guess it always has been kind of your earliest successes were as a duo as well. So that kind of social aspect has always kind of been there in one way or another. There's always been other people around you, even during like the peak of kind of pre-Sofa Sound, but post Octane and DLR was probably where you found out a lot of answers about you as a solo artist. And then Sofa Sound is almost like the answer, where you've built a whole family and a culture around what you do in a way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that is what I'm really like passionate about, and that, and again, like even if you're a solo artist, that you're with inside like a family and an operation that includes other people, and you get people to bounce off of and work with. But I always felt that collaboration was cool, because if you're working on your own, you're often taking a lot of bits of stuff that, I guess what like creativity is, taking stuff from everything that you've heard and everything that and then like amalgamating it something. And on your own, you can have quite a clear direction, and if you let yourself, you can fuck with that a bit, but like as a collaboration, often it's like always like really what the outcome is always like a really big surprise, and it's like hard, like that like kind of all of you taking those ideas from where you've heard them, and then like the idea of them filtering them down via the processes of like being diplomatic and ingraining different ideas in the different people. The outcome is always like just something you would never expect.
Yeah, massively. So the album, I mean, obviously there's the topic and the discourse and everything, which we're going to get into regarding money and the state of the world. But the real message then, the real concept of the album then is collaborations, really, and that magic that you can't forecast. When you sit down in the studio with someone, you can have an idea of where it might go, but there's the unquantifiable energy. You don't know how it's going to go. Like
no idea. It was always just a surprise, and that's why I always enjoy working with vocalists. And they were like my little island of like sanctuary during writing the album. Of like, like that's my safe space. You know what I mean? Like, and then there's like me on my own again, and that's like quite a scary place sometimes for me artistically. But like as well, by saying all of this, like most solo artists probably know and have found out, is that it really brings something out of you that's quite um unique, and like you really have to reach deep at certain points of your career to really find something that
Yeah.
you feel you're happy with, and an idea that you can confidently back without having like the validation of your collaboration or anybody around you. And with this album, a lot of this music like Break, or none of these people who I would usually access, I tortured myself like purposefully to say like, right, what are you all about? You know what I mean? Because that's what a lot of people were wondering, I think, like, what is DLR about? Because it's always been about other people.
Yeah. Have you found that out yourself, really? What is it all about?
Yeah, I have. I'm like incredibly demanding on myself. Like I know what I am. Like I am a really great musician at my best, but at my worst, I'm very, very difficult to deal with, and like my uncompromising nature can lead me to really struggle to chisel out ideas. But I think that's where my magic lies. So when you hear people, they talk about like, oh, I just make loads of tunes, and of course I have moments where I'm like would make like a string of tunes. Less so these days, but there are still these moments. But like, yeah, I'm more the producer who really has to find something special to me that makes me feel like, and it can be, the nuance can be so nuanced, like the tiniest little thing that might just be like, yeah, that's it. That yeah, it can be like torture, but that's kind of where my unique kind of edge lies.
Yeah. How do you find those moments, those sparks, those points where you are happy with that? Do you find them
uh,
through like constantly, like staying on it and on it and on it and on it and on it? Or if you sit in the room and you're just not feeling that and you're kind of going through the motions,
yeah,
you'll turn everything off and go away and come again another day? Because sometimes
yeah,
I find like inspiration can come from me if I push past that pain barrier almost, where you are just like
absolutely.
that's pulling your hair out, and then suddenly or something, but you need that kind of slog before. But other people, if they get that, they're just like, right, okay, this isn't going to happen today, I'll come again tomorrow.
Absolutely. I think you just learn to become so patient with myself. I think, there's like moments like now where I've not been in the studio much at all, and I could get in the studio tonight and maybe I'd roll something out, and because I just like vibing, and I was like, oh, this is all fresh again, and then there's like another version of me that's in the studio all the time, because I have to be, and then not, but maybe not being respectful of like taking space and stuff from the studio, and then having to really like slog out something because I'm just like, oh, heard that. My ears are just bored of everything. And then there's like something unique that can sometimes come from that. And like you say, that often can like be about pushing past a barrier, like a creative barrier,
Mm,
like the same as like going for a run. And then
yeah.
there's your like, you just get to that point and you're like, look, you're a human being. Like people fought in a war and stayed up for 4 days and fucking ran like 400 miles or something. It's like you can push past that point. Absolutely. It's just whether you want to, you know what I mean? And that's where I think like, where a lot of people have to like find that. And again, like some people, you can just have these moments where you're in a really great creative space, everything's really good. So, and you just find that space. So there's a patience that I think is required, because if your a demand is on you in some respect to create and make music a lot in your career, if that's your chosen path, then you understand that sometimes it's going to be easy, sometimes it's going to be hard, and sometimes like the two different things can bring different results. So um,
Mm,
I can always say that like taking a break is always the most important thing. Working really hard and putting yourself in a space where if inspiration hits, you're there in the moment to be able to take advantage of it, but also understanding that taking breaks and like giving time for self is inevitably gonna. I think that's just like any sport or ninja shit would like
yeah, yeah.
a top level would reflect that, and in music and art, of
Mm,
course, the same
yeah.
thing.
It's part of the discipline, I think, there. And then to tie it back to the kind of concept and the theme and the message of the album, all of this time, you were always, because you have to, because like you say, you've made that decision to make this a career, to make,
Yeah,
to pay bills from your art.
yeah,
There's always that nagging feeling of, fuck, I've got to pay the mortgage, you know. And
yeah,
what
for
I get
sure.
is that like the kind of where you decided to tie everything in around the idea of kind of money and economics and stuff
Um,
like that? Because you're not, you don't strike me as a man who, you know, if you were an MC, you wouldn't be MCing about stacking up the paper and stuff like that. Like, you don't strike me as a man who is
yeah.
inspired by like object, like material wealth in that type of way.
I guess I like kind of like would be I'm contradictory in ways like a lot of people, and I think that's been important to be honest about, we all get like just caught in this the wrong moment, and with money
Mm.
it's so powerful, like it will just sort of really take you. And I love stuff. So it's like it's a difficult one, isn't it? But I've grown up in a world of stuff, and I don't know what life is without stuff, and so that's a difficult one. But I always just know that like so if I would take this back to music, that I feel that if you ever let money prioritize your art, then that's gonna get a certain outcome for you, and I'm not gonna say that that's a wrong or right outcome, but if you don't let money impact your art, then it's going to give you a lot of freedom. But it's always going to be something because we live in a world of money, and that's not going to just change. And so I think one interesting thing about all of this is that I do think in 2023 and moving through these years, we're going to encounter untold amount of madness in the industry with AI and everything else that's happening. But also, there's a way at the moment where in the industry there is a lot of madness because a lot of artists over the years have been like, oh, I actually just have a load of power myself. I'm the artist. I'm the person making the music, and I can just sell stuff direct to people, and build my whole fan base and create my own microeconomics and live quite happily, And that is a super powerful ideology that is changing the face of music. And over the next couple of years, if people aren't willing to get down with that, I do think they're going to struggle because no one's going to be buying music like they already are. So, how as an artist are you accessing people to the stuff that you're doing, you as an artist, you as a person, the stuff that they're interested in, the human level of it all, because you can make good money out of that, and that is going to completely shift things because it's then if it's not about giant labels and how much you're selling or how many streams you got, if there's another way, then that big labels are going to not be able to like kind of project their narrative of the moment, which is like you've got to make absolute shit to make a load of money or through loads of streams and yada yada. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's a powerful moment for artists and the industry at the moment, in my humble opinion.
No, I think so. It's incredibly empowering. And I'm recognizing that from the set of my own platform. And the one
Yeah,
thing that I've found is that the value is in the audience and the community that you build up around you. And
exactly.
that's, and that takes years and years. Like, I personally feel like I've kind of gone back to square one in that type of way. But that everybody then who's following you, with
Yeah,
you, engaging with you and fucking with your shit, to use a phrase, like, is actually there for you, not the brand or anything like that. And I think like it's
exactly.
very empowering, but it's a game of patience and making sure that you respect the people who have come to respect you in a way, I think, really. And that's the
Yeah,
value.
yeah, I think just it's so powerful being having access to those people who love your music, who want to push you forward, being able to grow that audience, and again to have direct access to those people, and I'm not. I think streaming is super important, and that's the thing. It's like if I don't really care about how much money streaming brings me or how many gigs I get, then I can inject. I can just because I'm making good money from memberships and selling music direct or merchandise and stuff like this. Then and really like the membership. Let's be honest about this. If you build a good membership with people who love you and you keep that energy going, that's enough money for any artist to be in a
Mm.
pretty good position anyway. Then there's like stuff like gigs, the way you're gonna do gigs and you're gonna get paid, and you maybe can like prioritize the things that are a bit more important to you that represent your way of thinking and not just about how much money you're going to get paid from this gig because the financial pressure is taken away a little bit. And then also streaming wise, maybe you're like, well, I'm just going to make music for me because I'm getting paid to do that from these people. So then that's going to reflect, however it's going to reflect in streaming. And I would have thought probably positively because you're writing music that's true to you. So, but in general, I think like at the moment, if you're part of a big label, and we can see that big labels are starting to actually shut down, actually, I think, in ways, or like Sony, who own a lot of these labels, or like the bigger underground labels that we see underground in speech marks, they're they're starting to be like, oh, there's not much money in selling music anymore, so like, or streaming music anymore. And actually the artists are actually kind of getting a lot of that money directly now. So you can see that like the scope of like what we're looking at in the music industry is changing. And I think like interestingly, just there's a final point, you work with Noisier a lot and with the radio side of things, and they are literally like the almost like a benchmark for this, what we're talking about, and they realized how powerful and incredible they were and how important they were and how obviously they loved their community and they built something around their community, their people. It's not like they were like, this is ours, keep away, but you know, and then brought other people in, and look how powerful they are. They as far as I'm aware, never gave in to the
No,
bullshit. And like,
no, and I
yeah,
love
they've
that.
been
Absolutely love
great
that.
to me. They've always been great to me, and that's not just why I'm saying this stuff. So you know, and I think their mentality is clear to see with like people like Jonathan Emanu, aka Signal, who's been a good friend of mine for a long time, and I'm so proud to see him do what he does. And again, like he's quite like ferociously independent, which I love ferocious independentness. I'm just like, yeah, like you know,
Yeah,
fuck the system.
definitely.
So like you can just do what you want to do now, and like that I think Noisier like really showed those guys, because Jonathan like wants to be super successful, but he can see how I think how he can do that in himself, with his own vision,
Mm.
and no pun intended, and also the same with Bunchin and other guys on that label, so it's cool how they've infected those people. But a lot of young people are showing a lot of the older guys at the moment, like, look, this is how you can access making money in this day and age. They don't necessarily have the culture, but we as older people, and especially people older than me, struggle to get down with this like new way of thinking. So it's a symbiotic thing of like kind of learning, helping them learn about culture and what this is, and us learning about how do you make money from this industry as it is now, because it's changed so fast, so
Yeah, it's changed rapidly, but I can see you doing that with Sofa Sound and the artist I spoke to at a Vision Night, actually, the MC Freddie B.
yeah.
And he's like, but you kind of gave him his first opportunity on
Well,
the
no, he's
label.
amazing. Yeah, I met him at this place called the Mill in Manchester, and that's like my ex man. Her friends, they had this mill, and they're really cool. Like they should be like talked about, because they rented this place and put sound system in there and had people playing every weekend and stuff, and it's not block to block or what people might see, but for me, I was like, wow, this is really like representing like core underground values of like that we're just gonna pay for this space so people can come here and play drum and bass and chill. And it was a wicked space. They built like a smoking room, and it was amazing. Like so, but like so, and then Freddie was there, and yeah, he talked to me. He told me he didn't do the usual MC in your ear type thing. He did a thing about the Kill the Bill protest that he was at. That I and especially my ex Mayor's her sister was massively affected by, as well as a lot of other my friends who got Freddie got hit over the head with a shield, and he told me he did this story kind of spoken word, and I was just like, wow. So then this has moved on Freddie, because I think he deserves some props. Like he's just blew me away when I met him, and the way he delivered himself, like his ability to me, I was like in tick.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like any MC with that level of like, because I don't meet MCs often. You know what I mean? It's almost like kind of like female artists. I don't meet a huge amount of female artists, but if a female artist comes up to me and they've got all the bits, like wicked tunes, a real hard work ethic, way of laying that all down and stuff, I'm like in, like what we're lacking, I'm up for fast tracking, and Freddie, I definitely fast track. So I was like, mate, you've got the shit. Let's roll this out.
Yeah, I knew there's a Headroom track that he's done for a collaboration recently, and there's lyrics
Yeah,
about what's the point in eating on your own when you can share it. And the minute I
yeah,
heard
he's
that lyric,
great.
I'd heard other bits of his and knew that he was sound. And the minute I heard that lyric, I was like, right, that's a kindred spirit. And when we started speaking, and I brought up that lyrics when we
Yeah,
started talking, straight away he was very quick to highlight you opening the doors, like how he kind of felt very,
wicked.
isolated in the industry, and then you were one of the first people to give him a chance and breaking through. And
Okay,
he's
cool.
absolutely smashing it. So I can see what Noisia did with Vision and with their
Yeah,
community of artists and the Amanus of the world.
yeah.
You are doing that very
Yeah,
much
they
with
inspired me
your
massively.
artists and
They
stuff.
gave me a massive and then Perez and all these like yeah. I think we should all consider ourselves like visionaries in that respect. But people started that, and then I saw a documentary about Digger D, and then I was just like, and they were talking about like his the microeconomies and drill and how they just kept everything for themselves, and they were just like almost just they didn't involve any bigger labels or anything. There was no UKF or anything like that. They were just like, this is
Yeah.
us, we'll premiere our own shit, and that I was like, wow, these guys are super powerful with their ideology about what they believe this is, how they make this work, and they made it work big time, and they made good money, man. And they
Yeah.
could just do their shit, they don't have to change anything for anybody. So, I don't know, yeah, that really inspired me when I saw that. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, there's a fascinating lineage there as well with grime as well. It was a brilliant
Yeah,
BBC documentary recently on how grime did that as well, because it was the first kind of genre or movement culture to really kind of get documented by its own contributors with like the
yeah,
Risky Roads stuff and
yeah,
things like that and Lord of the
uh,
Mics. And there was, yeah, they created their own economy. It's like, well, nobody else is going to do this for us. Let's do it ourselves. I guess, like,
exactly.
Jungle was founded on that as well, but that was like back in the kind of paper
Yeah,
money days with dub plates and stuff like that. And, that was,
yeah.
again, that was their own economy and stuff, really, wasn't it?
Absolutely, they were so powerful, and then it was like a little bit like they didn't want to let people in. Then people really got let in. I don't know, it happened like 10, 15 years ago. You know what I mean? The doors opened and
You were
people
part of
came
that.
flooding in.
I would say that you were part of that kind of generation who kind of came through in like that mid 2000s, the middle school, basically.
Yeah, yeah, we're the middle school.
You come through in that generation where I think it was really, really tricky because the doors were still very much boarded up. But I think
They were tight. But I was
that was
even
the tightest point that they were, I think, because there's the big bubble of jungle and drum and bass had blown up and come back down. And in the early
yeah,
2000s, a lot of the pioneers, they didn't really know. There was a lot of unsurety because digital stuff was coming
yeah.
in, the whole
Oh
world
yeah,
was
it
changing.
was
So the
mad.
doors got tighter and tighter. And that was when you were making your first moves. Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But my music was, yeah, it was super, super tough. Like, I mean, like, I don't know, like, you're just this, like, I mean, it definitely doesn't work against me when you're just like this sort of middle class white boy, just like, hey, you listen to my tunes, listen to my tunes, and they're just like, what are you on about, mate? And he had to break down all this convention, which was totally fair enough in terms of like, no, I'm like serious, do you know what I mean? Like, I'm in, like, you are, and then like now, everybody's just like, oh yeah, Jay's like in, you know what I mean? He gets like the whole picture, like, because if you're part of like this generation and like the older generation, like the culture, like the tribal aspect of it is quite it is really there,
it
still,
really
and that's
is.
something that I'm like wanna, people youngers have mentioned this to me. They were like, oh, we see all you guys up there when it's a family kind of vibe, and they're like, like Dillinger talking to Goldie and them having a laugh, and then you there with them and blah blah blah, and I'm like, yeah, that's what they these guys gave to me, and it's a beautiful thing, and it's a culture and it's a community that is important to those mentalities are important to pass down, which is just like about making tunes with naughty bass lines and sick beats and like wicked sounds and like playing these in front of people and like all having a vibe and just being like making people want to be like, oh, what the fuck, you know what I mean? Like, and like, like when I don't know, honestly, I mean that's how it was, and it still happens these days at times where you're like, oh, what the fuck is that? Like, but it's less and less, if I'm honest. Like that it really is like the magic of drum and bass, where you're just like, the fucking hell is that, mate? Like, do you know what I mean? That's like game over, and it happens every now and again. This beautiful thing when it does, but you know what I mean? The screw face, the bass face, that element
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
scene is
Well,
sort
do you
of
know what I found? So you must have a complicated relationship with this. As a producer, when you get so deep in the science, and this is why I
Yeah.
don't make music, and I think I've
Yeah.
said this to you before, actually. I don't make music because I could see it happening with people really close to me who I was dabbling in the studio with. I'd
Yeah.
send them stuff, and instead of them coming back with vibes, they'd be like, "Oh, that sounds too compressed. That's in the wrong key."
Yeah. Yeah.
And they were over analyzing stuff. It's like, I never want to lose that magic, because that magic is my currency as a journalist, as a
Yeah.
storyteller. That
Yeah.
magic, I never want that to be kind of blown away or broken down too much for me.
Of
So
course.
you came into this as a music lover, you are now a music maker. And
Yeah.
so when you hear a piece of music, are you torn between the love of the music and that analytical side, which you've disciplined in all the ways that we were talking about before? Like,
Yeah, I guess. Well, I mean, I definitely, obviously, there's like a level of detachment that you can. Like, it is hard to get at times, but really, like most of the time, if it's good, it's just if I don't really like it, or if I can spot things that I feel like aren't really right to me, and other people are like, no, no, But like in general, honestly, like good music, I just love it, and I learned just to accept it. I really just enjoy it, and as you know, like any top level professional, I think you should be able to like find those times of separation. Like if you're a world class tennis player and then you're playing your son at tennis, do you know what I mean? Then you shouldn't want to be like smashing him every single time. You can like
yeah,
detach and be like, look, this is hitting a ball around is fun as well. So yeah, I love, and like listening to like you put on like some Dizzy Gillespie or something, and you like hear the emotion in that, and then you're just like, there's no, and then, yeah, I will at times be like, wow, like listen to how quiet it is, and then how loud it is, and then, or like listen to how deep but like for me, it's more like, oh, that's really interesting, you know what I mean? Because it's good, so, and then if it's shit, you're
yeah.
just like, yeah, you're just like, malfunction, malfunction, malfunction,
I guess
yeah,
that's the beauty of it. You can just change the meal that you're eating, and then suddenly the
yeah.
flavors are all new again, really, in that type of way.
It really varies with me, man. I'm not really like, and I let a lot of other people guide, like introducing me to new music, because I'm a musician who writes a lot of music, so I find it really intriguing to hear what people are listening to. But then I often will take my own direction, and I love YouTube. Like YouTube's great. Any algorithm head loves YouTube, because it's just, you can follow these crazy algorithm journeys, and you find
Oh
like the
man.
weirdest shit, and it's so cool. And you definitely don't find a lot of that shit on Spotify.
Oh, definitely. But to put you on the spot now, what's the weirdest shit that you found recently? What really kind of springs to mind, or what's
Uh,
the recent rabbit holes that you've been digging down?
I know, man. I honestly, I've not been on a music one again. I go up and down with it. But I did notice there's like this kind of whole new sort of generation now of like there's one thing that was called like barbershop jams or something like this. It's just guys just kind of made these like kind of, as I guess, as if you were like in the early 90s in LA hairdressers, and you're like getting in like a black barbers, and then you're just like, what, like this stuff's like bang on, you know what I mean? Like it's, I
Oh,
mean, it's kind of in a computer game way, and you're just like, wow, like I don't know, it's just funny to me the niches that people really like started to follow now, like which is often like the joy of YouTube, I guess, with filmmaking and with music or anything that's kind of audio. Really, is just this freedom of like, we're just going to put this up here, like, and we're going to enjoy weird concepts because we're not really too concerned about the streams. And in the end, you're probably going to get more streams anyway, because it's a really jokes little album that's kind of sounds like it's a computer game, but it's a barbershop. So yeah, you probably get a load of streams. But
I know what I'm going to be listening to after this
yeah,
conversation. That
yeah,
sounds
yeah,
absolutely amazing. I love
yeah.
niches.
It's like the weirdest kind of like just like computer jazz. Sounds like it's made by an Atari or something. People are so niche these days. Like it's really interesting.
Yeah. Do you think because of a commercialization and homogenization, and that massive brands run so many things in our lives, and we like, you go from one city to another or one hotel to another, and they all look the same, aren't they? Really, in a lot of places and shops, so you go anywhere and it's all the same. So, do you think niches? Because I've always loved niches. I've always loved that specialism.
Yeah,
Whether it's I worked in the curry world for a long time, and that's a niche into
yeah,
itself. Drum and bass and drum and bass has niches within niches. But do you think that we love niches more and more because everything else
yeah.
in our lives
I
is
think
just
you would.
spoon fed to us in the same wherever we go around the Western world?
Yeah, I think, of course, I just yeah, polarization is something I've been sort of like kind of getting more into recently, and it's like the more extreme something is, the more you're going to have the opposite reaction with humans a lot of the time, you know. So I think like politically, that's like there is a real strong consensus that like the extreme right kind of point of view in this country, in the UK, is really being now reflected back quite strongly by the left, even more so than ever because of how extreme it all is. So I think, like, you know, like you're saying with the like, so music again, a lot of stuff like at one point or some points and start sounding the same and yada yada, and then there's a big reaction against for people to be like, right, I want to find something that's unique to me, or you know, and really start to go in and look for that. And I think hip hop is often like a good like precursor to a lot of what we do, because it's really it's huge now obviously, and they've been through everything that we've been through like a million times really, and also going through the same sort of things. But people have really matured in hip hop, and the scene is so big that, you know, you can really find those niches, and people just like, no, this is what I do, regardless of what other people do, you know. And that drum and bass is starting to find its feet, I think, and it has over the years. But of recent time, you know, now at the moment, the mainstream is so strong. It's taking unique effort by artists to say, "Oh, I don't want to be a part of that. I don't want to make stuff like that. I want to make underground drum and bass."
Yeah.
And I think now the reaction is, yeah, we're becoming quite large. People, if everybody's going to be given like samples by producers over lockdown from the Patreons, and then there's Splice, you know, making all of this stuff available, I think eventually the human mind, you know, it demands, if you're really in this, then it demands that you dig deeper, and it demands that you go through these processes, you know, and that's what a lot of people are going through. And that's where my because it took me such a long time to get to where I am now, I feel like from, you told me that interview was 2013, I would say that was a really good moment for me with Octane, but then it went down on my own. Took a long time to come back up to have the skills that, yeah, that sculpted me as an artist, and the time it took, you know, made me really ask myself, who am I as an artist, and what am I giving this scene, you know. And I think that is also where I really gratefully just got a lot of respect back from the people in the industry who really mean a lot to me.
Yeah. What a journey that's been in that
It's been a
type
bit
of
of a mad
way.
ride, mate. It's a bit of a roller coaster. I'm not gonna lie. It doesn't seem to
Yeah.
stop, but I'm whatever. I took this journey, so
Yeah. And it's a better journey. I mean, it's a very honest journey. So, you know, that when you look in the mirror, you know that you've been on that journey yourself and you've really kind of pushed yourself. But I guess hearing quotes like what we started with then make you realize that that
yeah,
path, how deep that path goes and how long you've been
it's
laying
really
down
weird.
these slabs.
It still trips me out. I mean, yeah, it's quite mad. I didn't know I had that. Yeah, I always kind of felt like this, but I didn't know I'd been pushing this kind of vibe for too long. And I think people know about me, like, yeah, I can, you know, like I could have a really intense conversation with someone, but really that's not so common, you know, these days. And a lot of my energy and a lot of my thought I'm trying to put into my music, but it can't be. I think we all learned over lockdown and stuff. It can't be. It can't be projected like in a way where it's like too demanding on people in terms of like, we're surrounded by this stuff of like whatever way the media is leaning, depending on what you're looking at. There's these kind of just really direct kind of information that, like, in music and art, I do think there's a level of responsibility, if you want to make that like kind of fun to consume. You
Yeah.
know, like to make it enjoyable. Like any decent painting, like, you don't want to be looking at it and being like, "Oh my god, this makes me want to fucking like die." You know what I mean? You want to be
Mm.
looking at it being like, "Fuck, this is amazing," but also what it depicts is something really, you know, really thought provoking, and that's really
Or
great. You
brutal
know?
or extreme. Yeah,
Yeah,
completely.
exactly. Yeah, you know,
Completely.
so
I
that
think
can,
there's a really interesting turning point here in your discography, and that's Dreamland, because that was all essentially based on Brexit, wasn't it? Or there was a lot of discourse around
I
Brexit
guess
and
so. Yeah,
politics. If I remember an interview that I didn't do it with you, I had somebody else do it with you, just because of my own time frame. I'd got over myself and I
yeah.
wasn't still being shy of interviewing you. But I remember
No,
having to edit it down because you went in deep. But Dreamland was essentially based on international politics and the divisiveness. And a lot of the things you were saying in that interview still ring true to this day. In fact, like I should have
Yeah.
pulled out more quotes from that really, but
No,
you
I don't think
framed
so.
it as
Don't worry about it.
dreamland.
I mean,
You
all you have to
framed
do
it as
is look at the
dreamland
world now,
still.
and you can just see it's all there happening. So it's
Yeah,
like same old shit, different day. Are we going
yeah.
to sort of like we're going to try and we're going to do something about it? Are we going to do we care that much? And it's really horrendous what's happening with war at the moment. But it's really positive to see the reaction on the streets. But we've got to push hard to see the peaceful, results that we want to see in this world, and a society that loves each other, and doesn't want to
Yeah. And
rip
that's
each
the
other to
dreamland that you're
shreds.
talking about. That's the utopia that you would like to see, I
Yeah,
guess.
utopia is like a tough one, isn't it? It's like we're never going to see that, are we? I just want to see people just be a little bit more social to each other. I think it really makes a difference to ourselves personally. It's so lovely. Our friends, our family are really important to us, but everybody's important, and we got to be talking. We got to talk. We can't just be like, oh, all these right wing idiots just came and like, it's like, well, why are they right wing idiots? What's going on? What's going on in society? Why do people need to,
Why have they
be
gone that
hate?
way? Why do they have
Yeah,
such
yeah, yeah, yeah,
hateful
yeah, yeah.
views?
Like what this Sawada Brahman thing is like, how is someone like that exist?
Yeah.
That's got to be thought about, else we're never going to be able to change it.
Yeah, otherwise we're fighting it in exactly the same way or the same energy that they're putting into it, but the other
Yeah,
way.
yeah,
Exactly
yeah.
what you're talking about with
Which is just hate.
polarization there, really.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, and
which is
there,
not
that's
like,
I mean, that is the ultimate why, really. Is as a why kid who's always asking the
yeah,
questions. There, that is the ultimate question, and it's
yeah,
how do people end up with these extreme views in a way, really? And that's you're never going to get you're never going to get a nice answer
yeah.
there. I think it's always going to be something really negative. I think to drive
And
someone to that opinion.
yeah, and I guess tying it all back to this is where I just feel like it's tough to us even to analyze any of this stuff with money being at the forefront of everything. And that's not something that's just going to change. And tomorrow is not going to be, like when, you know, I don't think anybody would expect that. We're not going to be trading in like sort of fine yarns tomorrow, or like, whatever, like a woolen blanket that we made because that's our speciality for a couple of Swedes or whatever, like, but like the effect that money has on the things like, like at the moment, I feel there's a very extreme, everything seems to mirror like the kind of society in the current world, which is that, the music industry seems quite extremely conservative in the way that it's just like, yeah, let's just make this shit because that's what makes money. That's what the streamers tell us works, and so we wouldn't want them to fuck with that because we need to make money, and
Yeah.
it's very powerful that, like, and then also on the other side, like we've always seen, is that if you have a freedom to it all, like if you're burial, then you're like, hey, this is what I do, and I'm this guy, and then everybody's like, wow, okay, who the fuck are you? And then rewrites the whole kind of concept. But at the moment, yeah, we seem to be like, yeah, there seems to be some quite extreme movements towards just like trying to make money, and then the polarization, which is people trying to dig deeper,
Mm,
figure it all out, and be like, who am I, and what am I
yeah.
going to do this for?
And I know, and that all comes from conservative ideologies and the way that the
I
country
think
has
so.
been
Yeah.
run, and the northern hemisphere in general really has been run in a just in a capitalist kind of mind state, which make people need that because we've all been forced out. There isn't an abundance of casual money anymore. You don't have pocket money
Yeah.
in a way, like every penny that anyone earns, and even people who I think are incredibly successful are racked up in debt. I mean, or have a lot of commitment. So nobody, even people who look look like
Yeah.
they're well off, are everybody's struggling or
Tough.
overcommitted in that way.
It's really tough, and that's where the answer is. Like, I think in each other, in
Mm,
society, the answers are there. And it's amazing to see the support that people give each other. I think, like, we got to be like positive, which is like, again, like these things mirror each other, but in society, the amazing work that people do, and like that is why the England is not just a riot at the moment, and why there, these a lot of communities are there for each other, and drum and bass and music, like a lot of people are there for each other. There's a strong community, and at times, you can feel isolated and alone because of the way it all is. And but like people, we all love each other really, and there's we're there for each other, especially in our area of the underground where we're very close. And the amount of support I've received from the industry regarding, like, it's not like there's support structures where you're like, hey, are you going through mental health issues, blah blah blah. But there is, in a way, where, you know, you look at Dogger does really positive projects, other people do, and their stuff is spoken about a lot, and it's very much there that look, if you're struggling, if there's something that we can talk about, let's talk about it, you know, like, and we can be there for each other,
Mm.
you know. So there's a lot of positivity in amongst, like, this kind of, you know, what we can seem like quite a, I
Yeah.
don't know, I hate it to ever feel like a doom and gloom conversation, you know. There's a lot of positivity.
Definitely. And I imagine you would have found that with a lot of the collaborations that you did on the album. And let's talk about the album
Yes.
specifically, really, and kind of real kind of highlights for you.
MC wise, it feels like I wanted to keep it like, or vocalist wise, it's like low carbon footprint, it seems, but it's a low travel budget, really. But the people who I love and who I'm close to, I notice, you know, other people do other albums, and they want to work with people they've never worked with before, but there's people I've worked with who I love, and they're right there. And, like, yeah, and there's also people I haven't worked with who I love, and they're right there as well. So that was it for me. And Fox was a late addition to the album, which was a really welcome
I love
addition.
Fox.
I love Fox. You know, he speaks for me on the tracks that he works with. He says stuff that I want to hear. Yeah, but, like, honestly, man, they're all just like, Jake's literally just around the corner. Catherine Brenner at that time literally lived around the corner. Ryder Shafiq's always in town, and he's local to Bristol. And Gusto's at my house a lot anyway, because he's you know, back and forth. So it was like, you know, they were Freddie B, Manchester, you know, but he was down here. So yeah, we just jumped on something. So yeah, it really was very organic. I was just like, yeah, let's do this with who it feels right, you know?
Yeah, just being open to opportunities in that
Yeah,
type of way.
absolutely.
What did you learn about money? And I'm thinking particularly about the sample on fake money, and that the fact that actual money is like, there's the agreement, like basically, a bit, you know, if I held up a tenner, we both know it's a tenner, but it's actually a piece of paper, but we've
Yeah.
agreed that it's a tenner. It's a token that it's a token which says £10 basically, because we've agreed as society that £10 is £10. That's as far as my understanding goes. Now take that further, because I reckon you've read into this now.
I'm not like a huge reader. I am a reader, but, like, I take sources from everywhere. My ex partner was an economist. She studied at LSE. She was top level. We had
Wow.
conversations, and, you know, really enlightened me. But I mean, I think I was always aware that in Germany, when the economy collapsed in the 30s, I learned when I was looking into it, you know, that was a moment that overnight, like, money became something that was worth something to something that was worth absolutely nothing, you know, like, and there was, like, the inspiration was the wheelbarrow full of money.
I remember
Um,
that in school. Yeah. I was
yeah,
literally thinking about the wheelbarrows. Yeah. Go
yeah.
on.
And then I guess that story would be that, oh, that's happened a lot in Western society, but obviously no one talks about the fact that in Africa, for example, that there's a number of economies that's collapsed over however many years those economies have existed for, and the rest of the world, you know. So like, you know, this concept is definitely possible, and I guess, like, for those people, I guess it'd be interesting to, I guess there would be someone alive from the 1933 economy collapse, but they wouldn't be at an age where they would understand it. But when those people were talked to about money, their perception of money and idea of money would be very different to you and I, because they would have gone through an economic collapse where suddenly you're like, well, wait a minute, all these notes say 100 on them, and you're like, yeah, but now they're not worth anything, you know,
Yeah.
like, so, you know, like, I don't know, like, what the story was in that, it was the guy who basically, you know, yeah, like, overnight he couldn't even, like, all of his money, all of his savings were reduced to not even being able to get a bus
Or
home,
a
really.
loaf of bread or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
I
and then,
think I
like,
remember.
died on the
Yeah.
sofa. It's like a fable or whatever, you know, like, but yeah, I guess that's the concept, you know. And but that's still, like, I guess, in a world where money dictates everything, it's just so hard for humans, I think, or any of us, to have any idea or concept of what having no money means, and in this economy especially, do you know what I mean, where you need money. So what are you going to do if you don't have money? Then
Get into
that's a
debts.
big problem. It's a big problem, you know. So
Mm.
yeah,
Most.
I don't like, my concept or idea of money has not really changed during the process of this album, or it means no less or more to me, and I have a lot of respect that money is very important to a lot of people, and it means life or death, you know. So
Mm.
I guess that it is just interesting for any of us to be able to try and understand what having no money might mean to us, and also how important money is to us. And I guess over the past 4 years, that has intensified due to our current cost of living and where we've come from with all of this in terms of being before lockdown to now, and money really has being questioned. So a lot of us are asking this question to each other, and I meet
Yeah.
people who reflect this back to me all the time. So, which is really interesting.
Oh, definitely. And the range of reactions, especially during the lockdown for working DJs who,
Yeah,
artists who really relied on gigs, which is most career DJs and career people,
yeah,
who've decided to make a living
yeah,
out of their music. I knew a lot of DJs who, we've got shared friends who took jobs as delivery drivers, started working in
absolutely,
Tesco's and things like that. They,
absolutely.
because nobody could have seen this coming, and they all had payments on cars, mortgages,
I
all
know
of these things that they committed to, not thinking that the money would ever kind of stop. As long as you worked hard, you would get rewarded. And then
exactly.
suddenly that system wasn't in place for some time for anybody who worked in the real world, really, wasn't it?
Exactly, yeah. And the gig taken away, I think, can be quite like a powerful thing in itself. It just asks that question: what are you going to do? If you need to get a job, you need to get a job. But if you think you can access money in some other form, which again, it's 2023, and if you start memberships, if you're a DJ, you can have a membership, and it's the way you kind of look at it all now. And I think my kind of mentality or theory is with it is that like kind of people want to give you their money, really. Mr. X in Austria. This is Y in Switzerland. I know Mr. X in Australia. Whatever, all these people, they they're like, oh, we love your shit, but we don't buy music because we have Spotify. So how can we give you money? And that's like, I'm not saying this is like a
Hmm.
conversation. Maybe they talk about this, maybe they say that, but I really believe that is the mentality. It's like, and I think luckily because of stuff like OnlyFans and things like that, I think a lot of people went from like, oh yeah, she's only making money because she's got tits to, oh well, what are my tits like? Because I must have tits as well, right? Like some sort of like metaphorical tits,
Yeah.
which is like music production, and like this skill set that I've been honing in over the years that a lot of people are really intrigued by and interested in, and an art form that people are forever like intrigued by the other side of like how is this art created and what's it all about. It's a cult industry, so um they're like, how do I pay you money? You know what I mean? And you can see that via Black Barrel, Leo Cat, Amanu. Um, Look at their memberships. And I think, Black Barrel speaking for him now, but he's in Thailand. The war situation in Russia was meant that he had to be there.
Hmm.
He can't really access a lot of gigs at the moment, on top of the fact lockdown and everything else. I think it really pushed him into a position where he was like, well, I know my power as a person, as an artist. I'm a really great artist. I'm also a personality. I'm also someone that people love and people want access. And that lack of gigs really put that pressure on him to say, what are you going to do? And look at his Patreon now. He's got like 500 followers. He's loving life. You know what I mean? Like, so like that, the removal of gigs, that removal of all those privileges that we've always had has actually like asked a lot of questions to people. And actually that has given a lot of power to people. But it's also like, scared a lot. It's all pushed a lot of people away, and it's also destroyed a lot of careers. So it's been a mental 4 or 5 years. It's been a mental 10 years. It's been a mental 15 years.
Yeah.
How do you summarize this? Like it goes on and on, doesn't it? We just
Oh
got to.
man, and continues. So, what point during the 5 years then did this album start? At what point did you realize this is an album, or did you know that you were going to go into an album cycle?
I tried in lockdown. It really didn't work for me. I put myself in a tiny little creative box, which was two-step beats, really stripped back, um, a lot of nuance. So like like techno or like the inner workings of drum and bass or anything like that. Very much about nuance within the rhythms and the sounds and the timbres and the textures, the movement.
Hmm.
So like that was where I'm looking for my magic. Drum and bass, the clues in the name. Really stripped back, minimal approach to the music. We listen to Quarantine or old school drum and bass. Really, what you're looking for now is if you're looking to be anything close to that sound, is you're very, very focused on your sound selection. To taking stuff out is going to be beneficial, and really having those core sounds that you're like, oh, that's that sound. I would always reflect on like something like surface noise on quarantine where there is literally nothing going on and it's amazing. So I put myself in this tiny little box, which I think is really hard to be in these days on computers. And it nearly destroyed me. Once it did destroy me. And then the second time I pushed through, and then I started to notice, oh, I've got quite a lot of stuff lying around from over the efforts of the years. Whether they be short ideas or tracks that were like at a certain length and not very great. But yeah, I started to find that there was like some bits and bobs that I could start to piece together, and suddenly I was like, oh no, it looks like I'm starting to have an album. And yeah, I took some inspiration from that, and some other bits and bobs came from it. And then the last bit, the last 6 months, where I thought, oh, I need to do a couple more tracks, and literally achieved nothing.
Yeah,
So
no.
it was a really super weird like time for me, and I didn't feel like I was productive in the slightest. What it got out of me was some incredible moments and time, and also what it really pushed out of me, weirdly enough, was my production standards almost gone up by like exponentially. And I also feel like the ideas and the execution within my ideas has gone up exponentially. However, I don't feel that I've been very productive, and I felt like it's been a very difficult time. So, what does that tell me? What does that tell other people? It's hard to, ascertain really. But I guess what it says to me a lot of the time within me is that I have to push very hard. And like you said earlier on, break through these barriers and break through these moments to find the things I'm looking for. And no, by no means has it or will it ever be easy. So, and actually, weirdly enough, just to say this, like back to your original point, often why I would honestly just shy away from being in the studio or even like going anywhere near it because I'm just like, fuck, man, I know how much I have to give. And now I'm like starting to look at, I'm single. I love making music. I've gone through a fucking shitload over the past couple of years. A lot of my time's been like in all of these things, and I'm looking to like find those fun things about music. I love sound design. I love creating. I love dub techno. I love really like immersing myself in music, jazz. I'm following new directions, doing different things, and it's bringing a lot of that like enjoyment and just wanting to be in the studio and fuck about and just see what happens because that really is the core component of everything. That's where it really lies, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. You can't have one without the other, really, can you? You have the kind of fucking around periods, and then you have
Yeah,
the knuckle down moments where you've really, really got to hone in on things. And I think it's that feeling. I can relate to that in a way as a writer where you
yeah,
can be pottering away for ages and you know
yeah,
that it's worth staying up until 3 in the morning and your eyes are
yeah, yeah,
watering and you should be asleep and you're not looking after yourself. And then you do that for weeks and weeks and weeks, months and months and months. And then you come back and you start to look at a pattern and it's like, hang on,
yeah,
whoa, yeah, exactly as you said, you've amassed this kind of collection of ideas, body of work, or
yeah.
there's a theme in what you've done, but you can't tell at the time because it's so incremental because you're just so in it. So, and it takes those kind of gaps where you have to go away from it. And then,
It's
and
super tough.
then there's that fear when, yeah, when I'm looking at, I'm thinking like, God, I need to start writing again. I need to start doing this. I need to start earning
Yeah,
some money. And like when you've taken a bit of time off as a freelance, and then you think, fuck, how was I running at that speed? How on earth did I get up to that? And you
yeah,
know that
yeah,
you do, and you know that you're going to do it, but you don't know the point when that happens because it's so
yeah.
natural. It's all part of this big kind of creative clump of
You just
actions
gotta
and
know
thoughts and
exactly.
processes.
See, like the top, like the more you gravitate up to these sort of realms of like really starting to achieve like the sort of things you never dreamed about almost like then you're like into this new realm of really like having to understand self and where you're at and like your energy levels when the wrong time, the right time. And like I said, really kind of almost comes down to like kind of ninja-esque type approaches. Even just knowing that, like, look, if you need to chill and just sleep, and that's what you need to do, and if that's right for you, then you need to do that at that moment. Of course, you need to get out of that, and there's all the rest of it. But I saw, is it Capote or Capote, the film recently about the writer, and then he, like, kind of, like, you can see he's trying to write like the ultimate book, or his, his what he feels like his crowning moment, which it always was, it would seem historically, then it was like the way he had to try and access that and understanding that he would access it and then go out of it and then come back into it. And like you said, like amass this kind of body of work and then start to like get to a point where all of a sudden it started to make sense and then really going for that final drive and then refining back on everything, and then having this product, or like this thing that you created or, or did, and you're just like, at that moment, kind of just like, yeah, I'm not really sure what happened there, but like, and especially over the past, but I know what I really pushed like at times, and at times I really like shied away from it. And
I was going to ask, what does a destroyed DLR look like? When you said that the first kind of during lockdown, when you really put yourself in a box and you said it destroyed you, I mean, this is a really hard question
just
to ask.
scared
It's
me
not a
from the
very pleasant one.
studio. Saps the life out of you, doesn't it? Saps the confidence out of you, when you're doing this sort of stuff, like anything, you know what I mean? I guess if you were like kind of single and you're going on like 8 dates and then like they're terrible and you perform terribly every time and you're just like, oh God, I don't want to go on another date. And so, that's like they kind of just saps your confidence out, and music and art is, and being like top of your game is about confidence, really. You got to be in a good space and know when you're feeling confident in yourself, even if you're like kind of feeling a bit shit and like negative about things and like and stuff, or tired, but you're still confident, and you're like, no,
Mm.
it's cool. And that all of that again can bring out really different things from you. Yeah, like that's a destroyed DLR, I guess. Like seeing a therapist for 6 7 years, I should think that that type of language can be quite negative. I think like it's good to paint a picture, but like certainly I was not destroyed. I was like, but like it took its toll on me. It really did.
What have you learned from seeing a therapist for so long? And what was it that drove you to get therapy in the first place? I've thought about therapy a lot. I want to know more about myself, why I do the weird things that I do, and why I'm happiest on the edge. I'm not comfortable if things are comfortable, if you know what I mean. Like I
Yeah,
thrive off that kind of feeling of like shit. Like that's where some of my best stuff happens. But what did you learn
absolutely.
from going to therapy, and what was it that took you there?
So like in regards to like something you're saying there is understanding like how important that is to you. So where is the healthy way of managing that, and like understanding like your abilities as a person, or who you are. And that's the I just was so intrigued by like finding more peace in myself about, you know myself as a person, but also myself as an artist, and myself as a person in a relationship, giving myself to other people. And knowing that like a lot of the stuff like we talked about at the beginning of the conversation, being full on and having these things, it's like these are my special abilities more than anything, but they also the things that kind of caused me a lot of pain and a lot of suffering in my life. And so understanding these things and how to manage them is being really instrumental to me at this point in my career, just being quite like happy and content in myself about where I am and where I've reached, and understanding what success is to me, and like and yeah, like yeah, just personally as well, just trying to be happy with these things, because the thing that drove me to it is that people were like, oh, it was like 4 5 6 years ago, and people were like, oh, you're living the dream, and I was like, but I'm not happy. um and still, at times I just struggle because everybody struggles with their happiness because of the pressure of everything around us. So again, just being like understanding self and being like knowing to back off, and like trying to give myself a bit of space, do a bit of self-care maintenance, and yeah, it's been a really eye-opening like number of years. The past 2 years especially really just was nuts for me, and I've seen people around me reflecting that of themselves, as well. Like, I think Paul Smithy, spin back from Total Science, who I work with in the Source, would be happy for me to say that he's done a lot of work on himself, and at times I've seen him very vulnerable. And yeah,
He's
like
spoken about that. He's spoken about
yeah,
that on this podcast.
Goldie has talked
Mm.
about incredibly traumatic experiences that he's been through his life publicly, and like yeah, so it's like we've it's good to deal with your shit, it really is, like, and just find like what that thing is in yourself that makes you tick, and how to embrace it all, and it wasn't about me being like, oh, I'm deeply unhappy where I can't deal with life, but it definitely reached that point where I was like, no, I really want to do something about this. So yeah, I've done a lot of work on myself. I find myself as a single man at this point. This is not a calling card. A lot of that's because of the shit mentally that like I put on myself and stuff. And so, I'm still going through these processes, and this recent breakup has been almost like a penultimate point of me of like self-learning. And I go into this. I go into the new world. No, I go into this, this new normal that constantly exists as myself and just doing me.
Yeah.
I really am looking forward to just like it's like a bit of a new moment for me, like a new, like album done. Source really kind of finding their feet, being a single man, and music, the empowerment I found over the years in music, and like what that's going to bring now, I think is really exciting for me.
Wow, yeah. What a crossroad where anything can really happen in that type of
Yeah,
way.
yeah, yeah. I'm gonna make a load of like side trance and stuff. We don't know what the fuck happened. I found myself, guys. I found myself. I found mushrooms. No, I didn't. Yeah, not
Oh
yet.
man, I mean that's a whole other conversation. We could lose hours
I
talking
know.
about that.
Yeah,
So that's a
when's
specialist
your
subject of
psilocybin
mine.
series?
But that must have been tricky going through the process of the album, going through everything else, but also going through a breakup as well, and still committing to the album because at points like when a breakup happens, sometimes you just want to drop everything, but you can't. This is
I
you're
can't.
committed to the project and everything. That how can we hear that breakup at any point on the album?
I don't think so. I just think that, like, like I think that people know it in me. They can see it. You know what I mean? I don't. I wear everything on my face, and it's all out there. So people have seen me. Like, it's been mad. Like, and yeah, it's like helped build me. Again, like, but yeah, I mean, it's not where I want to be necessarily, but it's where I am. So, I honestly, I think you can hear that I put a lot of time and love into that album. I think. I am interested to like. I always wonder. I know people will probably be like, the production's like hot. It's tough, and I think the reflection of the music is reflective, but it's quite. It's a bit more aggy, really, for me, and
Hmm.
I think in it's consistently like that. Driving. And I think you can really hear my reflection of where I was at in my career and where like I'd found my feet production wise, really starting to make the sound that I wanted to hear, which is like limiting it to a core component of tracks and then just being like, right, there you go. And I think you can hear my kind of polarized, like, look, everybody's doing this, I'm doing this, and you can hear that I've always wanted to achieve that level of energy in a track without it feeling like it's too much this way. So you can really hear my, where I am in my career. No interludes, no like faffing about, no, just
Yeah,
12 tracks,
bang.
roll out, tie into each other in ways. And that's exactly where I wanted to be. And it was super tough, man. But like, I'm so happy I did it. Honestly, I'm just happy to move forward. Like, honestly, I feel
I think
so
a lot of
sorry for
people.
Maya. Honestly, my ex, I feel so sorry for her having to go through this stuff. You know what I mean? Where you're like this artist, like, oh, it's just I can't. It's so, and you're like, Mrs. is like. Did I sign up for? I don't remember signing up for this. So, yeah, she went through that. She learned like the hard way. But yeah, she was really good. She was pushed me, and like a lot of my friends, same thing. My friends have been amazing. Just push me, my family pushed me. And they all give me that like ability to be like, yeah, I'm gonna do this. This is what I'm gonna do, and I'm not gonna give in to anybody.
Well, you mentioned your mum at the start, and I
Yeah,
remember one of the very, very first interviews that we ever did was in 2012, and I rang you, and you were watching your brother in the Olympics.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
there's another
That's
high
it.
achiever in your family. So is that there must be a culture that's in place there, really supportive, positive culture, in order where you've been enabled, you've followed this path no matter what and pushed yourself, and your brother has done the same.
Yeah. It's a weird
What is
dynamic.
that?
I don't know
What's
how it
this?
all. Yeah, like my parents have always been super up for giving us like they're just like, look, opportunity, opportunity, opportunity. And every time that like, personally I would just be like, yeah, whatever, like I just do whatever. And like, it's not like my family didn't really have much money either. I was like such a little idiot, honestly. But like that's fine. That's who I was. So like and like yeah, and I just learned so much from that process. And then at a certain point I was just when I was 18, I was like, oh my God, what have I done? Like this, I'm like just like a spoiled child. All my mum and dad are trying to do is like really just trying to spend the little money they had on just trying to give us everything opportunity wise that we never could look for. Not like we never got like like games consoles, or we did have a computer because they felt that was part of the future of what was important to us and stuff. But so yeah, like I was like, I need to change this. I need to change this big time. My brother was a super high achiever. My other brother was a super high achiever, and I was like, I'm going to
there's
change.
another brother in the mix as well.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
what's
an
this?
older brother. He also done, he's also done really good, and
Brilliant.
another direction, and they're great parents as well. And just generally, I can see the input my parents give into us. But my thing is that I was just so reactionary against that. I was just like, right, I'm not going to be me that I was when I was young. No way. My mum was like, look, James, if you're unhappy with that, because I was like that unhappy when I was 18. I was like, what have I done? Like, and my mum was like, well, look, just direct all that energy into the opposite direction. And it was a process over like 10, 15, 20 years of really building to now being so committed into like, yeah, driving
Wow.
so hard for what I want in respect to music. So yeah, I mean,
Wow, that's
honestly,
really interesting. So then, when I first caught you, and that quote right at the start, and I found you very intense, you would have been late
yeah,
20s,
yeah,
and you would have been
I probably,
28. If you're 38 now, you were 28 then. So
yeah,
you would have been kind of at the end of that. You would have found something about yourself then at the end of
yeah.
that process and starting, that, and then the evolution of DLR continues in that type of way. But that part of where you were at that time would have related to everything where you'd been 10 years prior as a very unhappy 18-year-old.
Yeah, no, but it was sink or swim. It was like, look, me and Octane was something. We were like Nick from Noisier in Groningen. When we were just breaking up, went to their Noisier invites, the smaller one, and he was like, "Oh, we reckon you're going to be like the next us," and I was like, "We're done." Like, and he was like, "No, no, 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 you can't let that happen. You're going to be the next us," and I was like, Nick, you're not really fucking
Wow.
saying this to me, man. This is insane. Like, what? So, like, I, at that moment, everything was like, you know what I mean?
Wow.
Like, whoa, Jay, what is going on? Like, you know what I mean? You are being told that you could have been like a superstar, but really, now without Chris, like, you're going to have to like go, you sink or swim. And at the same time, classic story is I broke a hard drive that I just consolidated everything onto. I have no idea why I did this. And I took it to Berlin, and we were all just having a bit of a mashup session with my mates who were over from Australia. And I wanted to send a file to someone. I brought this thing with me, and I, plugged it in with the cable dragging across the table, and someone knocks it off, and Sapphire did, and he's like forever apologetic about this. I was like, mate, it was my
God.
fault.
Wow.
On
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
fault. What the fuck was I doing? And I lost everything, all of the Octane DLR shit, everything. That's why I set up the set never gets remixed or anything like that, which is great. But so I lost everything. So all of this stuff happened at once, and I was like, right, sink or swim. Like, and then from that moment, people were like, oh, you want to do remixes, stuff like that, and I was not very good, mate. And I really had to like be like, right, and I dig in super hard. It took really, it was a lot. Like, I'm not gonna lie, that was the toughest moment ever in my career. And now
Wow.
I'm so glad I did it, and I'm so glad and Chris gave me a lot of perspective leading up to that about production, and how passionate we can be about production. And yeah, it's been a really interesting journey. Definitely not like getting my violin back is so hard for me, but I'm glad these things sculpted me as a musician.
Massively. I feel privileged to have heard that part of the journey and to have kind of played a role in it, because I announced that
That
you
is so
guys had
funny, yeah.
split up and stuff. Because I remember you rang me up and I was doing the dishes and you were saying it's
That's so funny.
JDLR, and I was repeating it going JDLR. Like, I
Yeah,
didn't know, I didn't have your number saved or anything.
yeah, yeah.
And I was thinking, like, and you were almost a little bit like, oh, you were getting frustrated with me. And then we had this interview while
Totally.
I wasn't being paid by Drum and Bass Arena, but I really wanted to, give you that time and that space. And yeah, because without going into details of where I
Yeah.
was at really, but I was just like, right, I'm just going to have to do this and just interview you and put it on the website and not charge Drum and Bass Arena because they
Oh
haven't
wow.
agreed to this and
I owe
stuff. So
you.
no, oh no, not at all. But like, I didn't know where I didn't know where my life was going to be, but I knew that I'd
Yeah.
just become a dad and I needed to provide and I needed to make a career. And I
Yeah.
was working on a magazine, and I kind of had gone into the food
So you
world,
thought
but
you'd
that
get
hadn't
involved with drum and
worked.
bass? It's hilarious.
Well, yeah, I knew I needed to start.
Bad.
I knew I needed to get into a niche, and this was
Yeah.
my only I was done with the whole music industry in terms of every single genre and having
Yeah.
to have an opinion on everything.
Yeah.
drum and bass was the only thing that I really loved doing and loved
Yeah.
raving to and DJing. So it's like, if I can specialize in that, and drum and bass arena had come to me, but it's on very specific terms. And it was like, hold on, I can't stop and go, look, can you tell me this in 2 weeks' time when I'm back on 2 days a week? And can you just ring me between 9 and 5? Because those are the times that they pay me for. This world, this creative lifestyle doesn't work like that. And you were one of the first people, that was one of the first features where it's like, I'm just doing this out of hobbyist, out of love for you, the music, my craft, learning about digital editorial, like come from magazines. So I was also sink or swim very much. That's really at that time.
Isn't it? Like,
and I did. There are so many parallels there with.
But I was so impressed with your success and like how you stuck to your guns and you chiseled out something that's not really like even a thing within drum and bass. You know what I mean? So. I find that really intriguing, and I know we talk about that like behind your back because it's really special. It's really different, and it's again that dedication, that passion towards something that really like you can create something of your own, and it's really, really, really important because you actually like you're interested in talking and issues, whether they're positive or negative, and really, and where would we be without any of this talk, without you, without people like you? It was really. And you know, like, look at this. You know that, like,
wow. I knew you were talking to something. So, for the benefit of people listening now to the podcast, this is an audio podcast. A dog has just popped up. I knew you were talking to some type of sentient being because you were making gestures. It was like either you've got somebody in
my AI.
like,
dog is like, I don't know. She wants her food and she wants her like, but yeah, she's doing a nose in my arm. Wait, we'll just
go on.
1 second.
I love that.
Go away.
Well, we'll wrap up anyway. I think we'll wrap up because we're at this perfect kind of loop. But that, you know, even like the working with Noisia and doing Vision Radio came about through not being happy, being very, very unhappy where I was at, and ringing up Walter, going like, who can I talk to? Because we're not in these kind of formal environments where you have a 6 monthly review and you have a boss saying, I think you'd be good at this, we're going to put you on this plan, or we're going to promote you to this, blah, blah, blah. We're not in that. So you're just in your head all of the time. And I thought, who do I know, and who have I known for years who knows, who's distanced enough from me? And it could have been someone like yourself, you know. It's just like who do I know in the industry who can tell me whether I should quit or not? And Walter. And as we were talking, he was like, do you just thinking out loud, when the guys actually quit Noisia Radio, maybe you could be the host. And I laughed in this seat in this very room and told him to fuck off. I was like, that's never gonna happen. And he's like, I don't know, I'm thinking aloud, who knows? And then 3 months later, Martine emailed me going, I think you want to do the show with us. This is the kit that you need. Really
cool. So like just talking to people and like, making yourself known. And I met this young guy recently called Sam, and he's really, really cool. And I see that passion in him. I see that love for what we do in him and the culture. And he's a person who said to me about like, I see you guys up there, yada yada. But again, like he just seems to be one of these people who, he puts himself about, he talks to people, he wants to be heard. He's not just totally mash up all the time or anything like that. And it's like you can see how that really does go places, and that's it, isn't it? Like, and you definitely talk to the right person, Walter. Again, someone who's super passionate about sculpting out his own signage on industry, which is like a management aspect of it. But yeah, I think again, like it's so cool how you gave a lot of passion and like a lot of more like kind of balance to that show, didn't you? So that's really interesting to me. And I mean, you give me like a good amount of support, and not many people do. Like you, so I'm always happy for that. Maybe I'm like biased or something. Like, do you know what I mean? But yeah.
I love that. And I love the fact we've had this conversation and that it's being recorded and other people can listen to it if they so choose to. Let's sign out then. Who is this Sam guy then? Let's pass it on, pass the energy on, and put all it. Let's get anybody who's listening to this to look up who is this Sam person. Do I know them, or do I know their music? Let's finish.
No. He's just like I don't. I mean, he hasn't even really projected to me that he even makes music or like.
Wow.
Or DJs. He's more like a fan, and I'm sure he mixes and stuff. But he's just got like this air to him of like he's intrigued by the culture, by the industry, by me, by other artists like me, and I just love to see that energy in someone where it's like that reminds me of me. I could have been anybody, and I was kind of anybody, and I run a label. I don't do a lot of the running anymore, by the way. Alex Onset Smiler does a lot of the stuff.
Big up, Alex.
I'm like the big wig now. I pay people to be the big wig. It's sad fact. I also, I'm a DJ, I'm a producer. Also, I do educational stuff and things like that. So, you know, I found these things just like by being open to talking and meeting people and putting myself out there and really, I guess, if you're a music producer or anything like that, if anybody wants to understand how to get into the industry, just be true to yourself and your art and make amazing music, and that's obviously going to get you directly in front of somebody anyway, you know what I mean, regardless if you're a bit of an awkward weirdo or whatever. If you're really making music that really represents something special, then any of us are going to be paying attention to that, especially in this day and age where we're getting sent a lot of stuff that really is not representing the person themselves, is just sort of doing what they think they have to do to be heard, you know what I mean? So I think like someone like has a good like example of this at the moment is like Gyrophone. It's just seem very, that's a true sound, and like it interests me on that level where, like, even if I wouldn't be like, oh, I'm going to put this on Sofa Sound, I'm super intrigued and interested, and Bunshin, like, and I definitely don't listen to a lot of Bunshin, and he's going to grow in many ways, but he's incredible in his own right, and he's just got his thing, and this is the thing that gets you into certain positions, but yeah, so yeah, hopefully that helps, like, and like kind of give people a bit of insight. I think I always needed the added little bit as well of like being really good at interacting and talking to people and stuff like that, because I don't know, I felt like I always had a lot of learning to do and stuff like that, and all these people really helped me grow and learn and like really like kind of find myself as an artist.
Long may that learning continue, man.
No, no,
This
yeah,
has
it's really,
been
that's what's going to keep me.
amazing. This has been
Yeah,
an amazing conversation.
thank you, man.
Amazing.
Hopefully you can edit it down. It's like 5 minutes so people want to listen to
Now,
it.
I'm all about the unapologetically long form.
Yeah, good. Big up, man. Lots of love to you. All right, peace.